constitutional rights. It violates his statutory rights. We are dealing with a citizen of the United States, not someone who is from, foreign to this country.
But I just want to amplify one point. If somebody claims something in the name of national security, as an American citizen, does it automatically negate some rights from you?
It seems to. They seem to use that word or that phrase, national security, as a defense for everything. If you just pull out the word national security, even though this has nothing to do with national security, Mr. Mahmoud transporting batteries in his truck has absolutely nothing to do with the national security of the United States. But you roll out that word, and all of a sudden, it seems to be sacred with the courts. This country has to come to terms with what really is national security and what isn't. And national security, the phrase, can't serve as an excuse to take away the rights of American citizens without due process, without a trial, without any explanation. He can't even address his accusers. Those are all things that were well established, have been well established in this country until recently.
So, I mean, without the confinement, they're treating him like they're treating the people in Guantanamo almost.
Well, they're not incarcerating.
Yeah, well, without the incarceration, but the other, as far as legal rights.
In terms of the legal rights, yes, you don't have a right to know. I guess you do have a right to have a lawyer, but your lawyer doesn't have a right to know. We don't have to explain anything to you. We don't have to give you a trial. And we can keep doing this, even though we haven't explained, haven't given you a trial. You don't even know who your accusers are. Those are the similarities. Now, Mr. Mahmoud is not a combatant, and he's not accused of or had any hint of any violence. So there are differences between Mr. Mahmoud, obviously, and the people in Guantanamo. I'm not suggesting that there aren't differences, but if you take the very basic due process rights of explanation of charges, trial, confronting your accusers, then those are similarities with the people in Guantanamo.
So now they rejected his appeal, and they gave him an explanation it's only for national security. So what was your next step after that?
Next step after that, I was incensed. So I told Mr. Mahmoud that I wanted to continue this thing. I told him, look, I will do so without any further charge to him. He pays expenses or the filing fees without any more attorney fees. I would apply to the U.S. Supreme Court, and I would ask the U.S. Supreme Court to hear this, because it is a case of, I think, extreme legal significance. If we can treat one ethnic group this way, then every other ethnic group, Hispanics, Jews, Irish, you name it, they're at risk too for this. So I told him, I said, let's apply to the Supreme Court. Well, the Supreme Court doesn't take many cases, and Mr. Mahmoud knows that. I've explained to Mr. Mahmoud they take very few cases. But because there's some disagreement in the courts below about whether there should be a remedy for this, then this may well be one of the cases they consider to take. They will consider taking. I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know whether they will take it. But we have to be realistic that there are very, very few cases that they take. On the other hand, it's something that's so important that it's deserving of review by the U.S. Supreme Court. Basically, I want a court here to tell me, all right, if this is the way this country is going to be run, I want a court here to tell me this. Tell me that a man who's fought for this country in war, who has served his country, who's paid every tax, who is a credit to his community in helping the poor, tell me that he's not allowed to face his accusers. Tell me, if that's the way it's going to be, that he is not allowed to understand what charges have been placed against him. Tell me and tell him that you have a right just to take away his valuable license, which is a constitutional property, by the way, without any kind of hearing. If that's the rules of the game now, that we're now confronted with in this country, at least be honest with it. At least tell me that's the rules here. And then everybody can judge for themselves.
Right. Okay, Mr. Katz, I just want to ask you, I mean, how have you seen Mr. Mahmoud has held up through all of these proceedings and the things which have happened to him?
Well, it's been very, very, very hard on Mr. Mahmoud, and it's very, very hard on his family. He should not have had to incur the expense that this has taken. Mr. Mahmoud should not have had to incur the damage to his reputation. No one should be humiliated. No citizen of this country, especially one who's fought for this country in war, should have to suffer the humiliation of Mr. Mahmoud. So at certain times, Mr. Mahmoud's okay. At certain times, it's more harmful, it's more hurtful. But every single time that Mr. Mahmoud comes to my office or is on the phone, what shines through is his dignity, his self-esteem, his respect, his concern for others, his concern for the oppressed. There hasn't been one single email or one single phone call from Mr. Mahmoud, despite what he's gone through, where he hasn't asked me, how's your wife doing? How are your children? How are you feeling, Mr. Katz? Not one single time. In fact, every email, every phone conversation. I mean, that's the kind of person that I'm dealing with here. And so I'm surprised how well he's held up. I'm surprised at the dignity. Actually, I'm not surprised at the dignity. Having gotten to know Mr. Mahmoud, I'm not surprised at his dignity, at his that he holds his head high. That's just who he is. So, to answer your question directly, it's mixed. It's sometimes there are better days, sometimes there are worse days, but.
And what would you like to see to be the final outcome of all of this?
The final outcome is I like to see that the court's judgment is reversed. I would like to see that Mr. Mahmoud is compensated. He's not here trying to get rich. In fact, that was never a goal of his. Never a goal of his to come in here and play the lawsuit lottery or to get rich. What Mr. Mahmoud came in here for is to have this judgment reversed, to make sure that other Muslims and other people didn't suffer the same thing. What I would like is the judgment reversed, Mr. Mahmoud to be compensated, and the word to go out to other courts and to people that there is a remedy for this, that this behavior isn't going to be tolerated, and that the laws which we pretend to be so proud of here, that we can be proud of in fact, not just theory. That's what I would like to see.
Okay, well, Mr. Katz, thank you very much for explaining us the case of Mr. Mahmoud. And it's good to know that here in America that we do have people who try to uphold the laws of this country and look for justice and equality for everyone, regardless of their religion may be different than theirs. So I hope our viewers were able to get some insight into the legal system here in the United States of America, and to know that there are good Americans who believe in the laws of this country, and they in no way are precluded from representing a Muslim of good character and good morals. I hope we've been able to separate the fact from the fiction, the truth from the falsehoods, and the myths from the realities, and leave you with a positive understanding about Islam and Muslims. And I invite you to join us as we continue to travel throughout the world of Islam, keeping it real by telling the stories which must be told. And I ask you all to remember the very important rule: don't judge Islam by the people, but judge the people by Islam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. La ilaha